Hi, and welcome to this short video where I'm going to go over the IGCSE Marine Science, and especially going to go over the exam style questions they have in the book. If you have your book, remember that if you use this code here, you get access to all the answers. So it's not just about giving the answers, this is about showing how I would try to get all the points in a IGCSE style marine question. As always, this here is non-profit and any errors here are mine and mine alone. So let's get on with the questions. I have used a copy of the Cambridge book here, and I hope this is okay. So our first question, A, state the name of the force that keeps the moon in orbit around the Earth. When our command word is state, and the command word is always the first part of the question, the command word tells us how to answer the question, and when the command word is state, we should just give it. No explanation, no nothing else. So I'll state it as gravity, and then I move on and get my 1 point. Now the next question here is a good question. It's also a question that shows why it is important not just to read the text in your book, but also look at the figures, because this question here really goes into figure 1.25 at page 72 at your textbook. If you find this question here hard, try opening your textbook at page 72, because the first picture here shows the moon in the first quarter. So compared to the sun, it is at a right angle. So that describes the first question. Then explain how this alignment affects the tidal amplitude. And again, if you remember your figure 1.25, we know that when the moon is at the first quarter, we have neap tide, which is the smaller amplitude. So my answer would be, when the moon is at the first quarter, its gravitational pull is at about 90-degree angle compared to the sun's gravitational pull. This means we are at neap tide, and the tidal range at the coast will be smaller, or the tidal amplitude will be less, smaller, because the gravitational attraction from the sun and the moon are in different directions. So here comes a big question about earthquake and tsunamis. And if you notice, there are many 3 and 2 point questions here. In general, in Cambridge, when a question has more than 1 point, it also means you have to state more than one thing to get the points. I'll try to show how to do it here. So first they ask about, describe how an earthquake forms at a convergent plate boundary. The convergent plate boundary is where the plates move towards each other and pressure will build up. That's 1 point. Until it is released as a sudden movement of the plates. That's the second point. This movement is what causes an earthquake. Again here, it's a good idea to look at in your book to see the different plates here, the divergent and the convergent plates. And then they ask us to describe a tsunami. And I have gone a little overboard here, saying a tsunami is when a large volume of water is displaced, usually from an underwater earthquake. When the water is displaced, the wave travels quickly through the deep ocean. The amplitude of the wave seems on the surface is small. If you have a boat there, you might not even feel it, and the wavelength is long. If any of you do physics, you know how to calculate these things. Anyway, when the wave approaches the coast, the ocean is more shallow, and this will increase the height of the wave and decrease the wavelength. So you get a high wave of water approaching the coast. C, they ask how a tsunami is formed, and I kind of answered this in the second question, but anyway, displacement of a large amount of water, usually by an underwater earthquake or by landslide or underwater volcanoes, or, which is not mentioned in the text, by an impact of a meteor. And describe the impact of tsunamis on human coastal communities. Well, the tsunami hitting the coastal community can cause damage from the impact of the wave. That can lead to loss of lives, destroy buildings and infrastructure. That's one thing. Farmland can get flooded by the seawater that destroys local farming. Small note here, salt water is not good for farmland. And fishing boats and tourist infrastructure can get damaged, causing economic problems. The last two here, I probably answered them as 3-point questions instead of 2-point questions. But anyway, here we go. All right, so on to our last question here. We asked to identify feature A, B, and C. Just notice that B and C are placed in opposite order here. A is the abyssal plain, B is an ocean trench, and C is a mid-ocean ridge. And then they ask, how does an underwater volcano that is shown here might one day form an island? And my answer here would be, well, repeated eruption will increase the height until it might break through the surface of the ocean to form an island. And just a little fact here, this process is seen at Iceland, where we see new islands growing. The last point you don't need to have in the answer, but it's just me. And in question 4, they say the Atlantic Ocean contains 2 ocean gyres. Describe how oceanic currents forms to create ocean gyres. Okay, so a current is a persistent flow of water in a particular direction, and surface currents are caused by the prevailing winds and spinning of Earth. For example, here in Denmark, the wind tends to blow from the west to the east. The spinning of the Earth causes currents north of the equator to turn in a clockwise direction and south of the equator to turn in a counterclock direction. This circulation causes the formation of the North Atlantic gyre spinning clockwise and the South Atlantic gyre spinning counterclockwise.